Esper control lists. It's more of a kind of like a beatdown deck almost. It gives him a little bit of an aggressive edge. He has a couple of Lingering Souls, which we can equip with the Runechanter's Pike. He has a standard Augur Bolus Snapcaster Mage Restoration Angel package, as well as all the control cards like Syncopate, Dissipate. 2 copies of Supreme Verdict in case things go out of control. But again, he's not a traditional Esper control deck, so he doesn't max out on Supreme Verdicts like a deck like Shaheen's or Pen Lundquist.
We can see he has no Drown Yards at all. So he is not milling people out. That is not an option for his deck. He is killing them with damage. Interesting that there are only 2 Lingering Souls and no Sorens in this deck list. So you might think maybe it's a Shaheen style deck list, but you can actually check out a deck tech with Joe that's already been posted on the website previously during coverage. So feel free, go take a look at that after the round. You want to see more details on his kind of Esper mid-range deck. Opposite him, we have Reid the Duke, member of Team Star City Games, one of my teammates. He's playing a deck that he's played a lot. You've probably seen him playing it in things like the mocks. He's playing Jund, similar to the deck he played actually at Pro Tour Montreal.
Been touting it for quite a while.
Yeah, so it's a typical, for him, style of Jund list. We have 2 Arbor Elves to give it a little bit of extra acceleration when you don't always draw that Farseek. In addition to kind of a typical removal suite of a pair of Tragic Slips, an Abrupt Decay, a Victim of Night, a Dreadbore, and a Murder. And then he has 3 Liliana of the Veil. I've seen some lists today cutting that down, but he's still playing 3, and 2 Garruk Primal Hunters, to go along with 2 Rakdos Return, 2 Bonfire of the Damned, 1 Mizium Mortars, and then 2 Ground Seals for those Reanimator matchups.
And I think because of the amount of sheer removal that Reid has in his deck, he even has an Abrupt Decay as an answer to a Runechanter's Pike. I would, based on the deck list, just on the surface, it would look like the Jund player would have a slight advantage in this matchup.
I certainly think so. In the typical Esper control versus Jund matchups, it turns into a card advantage war, which, while you would typically expect the blue deck to be winning in, Jund actually does very well in card advantage battles. It can win these 1-for-1 trades. Here, Joe can't really play that game nearly as well, only having the 3 Sphinx Revelations, not having the Think Twices, not having as much counter magic. So he's much worse at those attrition battles than the normal Esper lists, and his deck turns on Reid's spot removal.
Yes.
In a way that normal Esper lists don't.
Yeah, and we have a pretty good start from Reid Duke. Typical Jund, turn 2 Farseek, turn 3 into one of the 4 drops. This time it happens to be Huntmaster of the Fells.
Yep.
Quite good against this type of Esper mid-range type deck.
Absolutely. One thing Reid does not have that you're starting to see in some Jund lists is Thunderbar Hellkite, which is a great answer to this Lingering Souls we see Joe casting here. So Reid will not have that available to him, but he does have things like Bonfire of the Damned, which will do a lot of work against Joe's kind of aggressive token strategy he's employing right now.
Yeah, he has Bonfire of the Damned. He has 1 copy of Mizium Mortars if he needs to late in the game to try to clear out Joe's side of the board. But again, Lingering Souls, not that big of a threat unless he has a Runechanter's Pike to go along with it.
I think that's spot on.
And again, we mentioned how Lingering Souls is really great at protecting people with Planeswalkers, but Joe really doesn't have any Planeswalkers deck to protect, so it's really just trying to be aggressive with his Lingering Souls, but without a Sorin, he's really relying on drawing those Runechanter Pikes.
Yep, and here we see, just flipping that Huntmaster in Joe's upkeep, picking off the first of those tokens, and now this 4/4s are start getting in there probably, and Reid might not know what he's up against. I don't know how familiar Reid is with Joe's deck.
It is certainly different than a traditional Esper deck. I'm not sure. It'd be interesting. Obviously, they both have good records. Maybe they've been sitting across from each other all day. Maybe Reid has an idea that Joe's more of an aggressive deck than a typical control deck, so he's not as fearful as cards like Supreme Verdict or Planeswalkers.
So the Thought Scours certainly are going to give Reid pause, and I'm sure his brain's crunching on what does that mean. But the first Thought Scour milled both a Supreme Verdict and a Azorius Charm, 2 cards that are a typical control kind of list.
Yeah.
So maybe Reid thinks it's a control Esper list that just happens to be playing extra copies of Snapcaster Mages to take advantage of those Thought Scours. But now we see a Moorland Haunt, not a card you really see in Esper control. So Reid now is probably putting together the pieces, regardless of his knowledge coming into the match, and figuring out that this is not your normal Esper list.
And I believe that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Reid is on Star City Games on your team for the Pro Tour.
Yep.
You guys had a similar Esper deck that played a Runechanter's Pike, right?
So we had, I think, something like that in testing, but really the Runechanter's Pike was only present in our, and here we see a Tragic Slip in combat, really only in our blue-white red list.
Okay.
Our Esper list was kind of a traditional Patrick Chapin style control deck that he developed with Guillaume Wafotapa.
Okay.
And so it has a lot of the more traditional kind of controlling kind of cards.
So Joe activates Moorland Haunt, tries to double block, but Reid does have a Tragic Slip to kill one of the tokens, and he follows it up with a
flips back to
Liliana the
Huntmaster.
Veil, which flip backs Huntmaster makes another wolf. So pretty good shape for Reid here. Joe probably needs a Supreme Verdict, but even if he has a Supreme Verdict, the Liliana the Veil is going to be putting a little pressure on Joe's hand.
So Joe only has one Supreme Verdict left, but we do see that Snapcaster Mage in his hand.
Yeah.
So he gets the 6 mana, he'll have that available to him. Needs to hold on though for another turn. And here we see he's just going to just make some more Lingering Souls tokens, probably just jump block frequently.
Yeah.
And to make sure that Huntmaster doesn't flip again.
And again, even though, like you said, if he draws a 6th land, he can play the Snapcaster Mage, or if he has it, he can play the Snapcaster Mage and get back a Supreme Verdict. But again, Liliana is going to be ticking up, picking apart his hand.
Yep.
And so he's going to be expending a lot just to deal with one Huntmaster effectively.
Absolutely. And he has no good way to interact with that Liliana once it does get to 6, which is basically a triple stone rain him.
Yeah. Maybe it'd be interesting to see whether or not Reid just brings in the wolves, leaves the Huntmaster back, tries to flip it next turn again. Comfortable. He doesn't have a 5th land. Wondering whether or not maybe he's considering not upticking Liliana because he doesn't want to discard any cards in his hand.
I think though he must realize how far ahead he is in this kind of attrition battle, and he just wants to get Joe's resources depleted while he's ahead on board.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it looks like he does have it's hard to tell his full hand. I thought I saw a Thragtusk there.
Yeah.
So when he does draw that 5th land, he knows he's going to be pulling even further ahead. Although interesting, so unique thing here, getting aggressive. I actually like that line, given that he does have all spells.
So decides to attack, decides to tick down Liliana, forcing Joe to sacrifice one of the tokens, making it clear for Reid to attack with all 3 of his creatures, not fearing a double block here.
And unfortunately, Joe decides just to, interesting, not jumping. So his plan is not just to cast this Wrath next turn.
And it's interesting, really?
Killing Liliana.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Decides to go after Liliana. I'm not sure how much of a threat Liliana really is, though, right now. He does have a Restoration Angel still in his hand. I don't think Reid is that unhappy with this sequence of plays.
If Reid though doesn't have a removal spell, this eventually... What? Okay, Augury, sure. So yeah, so he's moved off of this need to Wrath now. Now instead he's just going to try to get some value out of this Restoration Angel.
Yep. And Restoration Angel does a good job blocking Huntmaster, so...
I really like this line that Joe took. It's something that didn't, kind of intuitively occur to me. I was very focused on let's just Wrath and try to clean up the board that way.
Yeah.
But because Reid made that minus play on the Liliana, he opened himself up to this kind of more aggressive line from Joe.
Yes. Looks like Reid has a Olivia that he can cast this turn if he chooses to.
Still, being stalled in the 4 lands is really hurting him here.
And Restoration Angel could prove problematic right now.
Yeah, this could go badly for Reid.
Does he have a murder? Doesn't look like it. So, yep, Restoration Angel resolves, targeting the Augur Bows, blinking it. Looks like a Sphinx Revelation might be revealed. Also has a Dissipate there as an option.
I suspect he'll take the Revelation because he can cast it for 4. But Dissipate certainly is appealing here.
Maybe he thinks he has enough in play. He just wants to make sure. Dissipate Snapcaster dissipates pretty good, but again, Revelation is just a really powerful card. Wants a little life cushion.
I'd be pulled in both directions. I think that's close because Reid hasn't played a spell right in last turn. Obviously he played the Liliana and minus and got aggressive. But missed his 5th land drop. You probably think Reid has a number of expensive spells in his hand.
Yeah.
So getting that Dissipate ready. Ooh, and here we see
Wow.
that is a killer bonfire.
That is a great bonfire.
And
so he did finally draw a 5th land.
Just like that thing swing back the other way.
Well, Joe does have a Sphinx Revelation. So, and he even has a Lingering Souls. So you can actually cast Flashback if he chooses to deal with the wolf tokens this turn.
Still was a big draw.
Yeah, it doesn't need to pull the trigger on the Snapcaster yet. So likely just gonna, maybe he could just cast, maybe he just wants to cast some Sphinx Revelation here.
Yeah, the one fear if he does play something like Lingering Souls here is he's dead to a Miracle Bonfire, potentially. At least he still gets to keep up Azorius Charm.
Mm-hmm.
So he would not actually be dead on board to that. Should he just cast and flashback?
No, but I like just casting Sphinx Revelation here. You can't really go wrong with gaining 4 life, fogging the attack effectively, and drawing 4 cards.
Looks like that is the decision he's made. Reid looked like he may have drawn a Miracle there, but I don't think it actually was. I think he may have just been contemplating the card.
Does have a Thragtusk. Could really use a Kessig Wolf run here. Keswick Wolfrun will allow him to start attacking. With Moorland Haunt and Lingering Souls, Joe's going to be able to make a number of chump blockers here if he needs to deal with the Thragtusk.
And he just drew another Sphinx Revelation off the first.
Wow.
So he's just chaining those things together here.
An Orzhov Charm. So it looks like he has a Tragic Slip as well. So he has removal spells here. Not maybe make an appearance from Lingering Souls here. Give him some chump blockers. He can actually cast Flashback and still have mana up for either an Orzhov Charm, a Azorius Charm, or a Tragic Slip. So a lot of range here.
Two of those. I think he's not going to play the land this turn. He can actually keep up both the Orzhov Charm with the Slip, if he chooses to.
Yeah. I think that last land might be a Godless Shrine. Looks like he might want to just play
Isolated Chapel to me. Oh, there's no Godless Shrine there. I think there might also be an Isolated Chapel in his hand. Oh, no, I think you're right.
So yeah, we're gonna make 2 tokens, and he just decides to pass back here. Yeah, with Joe at 12, not really any fear here. Maybe he'll just chump block the Thragtusk, take 4. Miracle Bonfire makes things a lot interesting. Yep, and that's exactly what we have here. Bonfire for 4, exactly the card Reid needed here. Joe obviously still has outs. He has a Tragic Slip, he has an Orzhov Charm, he has Azorius Charm, so he's not dead on board.
Interesting. He's trying to draw...
And he draws a Syncopate.
Which wow. So he just 2-outed Reid there.
And again, he wouldn't have been able to Azorius Charm there, but he still had a Tragic Slip, so he's not dead.
Oh yeah, not at all.
Yeah, he would have been able to kill the Thragtusk, then he could have decided to just go for the Supreme Break that turn.
Yep.
And he still has 2 mana up.
Here, Joe has a number of options. You know, he's still thinking, do I want to just fire off another Revelation here?
At this point, when Reid is threatening 9 damage, it's tough to just sit back and at a certain point you have to imagine he has to try to go for some sort of proactive play as opposed to just casting Sphinx Revelation. So he does have a Snackback, so he has a number of lines of play here.
I can easily see him making the line of Snapcaster, Verdict, and then just immediately slip the token, the Beast token, and then just leave the board empty. You know, Reid probably has, I think Reid might have 2 or 3 cards in his hand. I think he's going for that line now.
Well, I like that line because he still has a Revelation in his hand.
Right.
You know? He also has a Lingering Souls in his graveyard. So as long as he's able to just clear the board, there's Thundermaw Hellkite's obviously a concern, but you have to assume Reid deck's pretty popular player. He writes about this deck a lot. You know that Reid really isn't a proponent for Thundermaw in his Jung deck, so I think it's safe for him to just go for it here.
Yep.
Exactly what he does, and it looks like exactly.
Slipping the token. Yep. So and now, okay, passing it back.
So as long as he's able to dodge top deck Bonfire, it looks like he's going to be okay.
And we know Reid's out of Bonfires now.
Is Joe at 2 life?
That does not look right.
Can we get a confirmation that Joe's at 2 life here? So Joe draws a card. Either way, he still has a Sphinx Revelation. So he looks to be in, and it does appear that Joe is at 2 life.
He was at 8 and he took 2 to 6.
Not sure how he got to 2. Okay, so we might have missed 2 damage off of. Might have missed some damage here. So looks like he's flashing back Lingering Souls, gives him some blockers.
And being at 2 definitely changes the makeup, the complexion of his board state.
But again, we know that Reid doesn't have any more Bonfires left in his deck. He does have Rakdos Return, which is technically direct damage. He has he can allow the Huntmaster to just flip, pass back. But again, Joe will be able to gain 4 life this turn, bringing him up to 6.
Yep. Oh, I think we missed the 2 from the first, the Resolved Bonfire for 2, which would have put him from 8 to 6. And he took 2 from the Wolf going to 4, and he may play an untacked shot land to hit that 4 mana up that turn.
Okay.
So I can see I think that's how Joe got to 2.
So wondering if I think Olivia would be a pretty good play right here.
And Olivia picking off a token.
And it looks like he does have the Olivia. There is a Tragic Slip, so he's going to be able to deal with the Olivia this turn if he wants to. Looks like Reid might just ping a token and attack with everything.
I mean, he may have to kill one of the creatures that's attacking him here, right? He's going to be Sphinx of Revelation only for 3 if he wants to use that Tragic Slip.
That's true.
So he's going to be at 5 life. He might easily just choose to slip the Huntmaster here. Oh, interesting. Yeah, okay, there's the ping.
Although Joe can still make a Moorland Haunt token, and double block. Does he have another? No. So he has a Tragic Slip. So he could choose to double block the token, but no. I think he just has the Revelation here.
He's doing it for the max. So he's not leaving the slip, the one made up for slip.
And I think that's fine. Chains into another one. Still has a. I think he has 2 Tragic Slips in his hand now.
I think he should be at 3. He was at 2. He gained 4 from that to 6. There we go. He's at 3. Okay. So life total is now looking correct. Joe on the ropes here. I mean, he does have another Revelation in his hand, but Reid has a pretty impressive board.
Has to make a play this turn. Can't afford to allow the Huntmaster to flip.
And we can see he doesn't have another Snapcaster to flashback. I think he has another Verdict in his graveyard that he milled.
He has an Augur though, which will allow him to dig a little more and prevent the Huntmaster from flipping. So 1, 2, 3. Thought Scour.
I mean, that Olivia by itself is going to be lethal here.
As long as nothing dies, he won't be able to Tragic Slip.
Right. I guess he's going to be taking. I mean, it's a Revelation for 4 right now, which I guess will keep him far enough ahead to offset the damage he's taking on the ground.
Yeah, he still has that Sphinx of Revelation. Looks like he's going to be Thought Scouring this turn. So I believe he played. Did he play a land this turn?
He hasn't. I don't believe he's yet played a land.
So he Thought Scours for 2. Does not reveal Lingering Souls. Draws another land.
Well, we know he's out of Lingering Souls. He's out of Verdicts.
Mm-hmm.
He has, I think, 2 Snapcasters left, which will let him flash back a Verdict. That's really what he's digging for.
But his hand is nothing but lands, 2 Tragic Slips, and a Sphinx of Revelation. So what line do you take here? You can't. Huntmaster's not flipping. He doesn't have to worry about that. Next turn, he has to deal with an Olivia. He has 2 copies of Tragic Slip, but Olivia's a 4/4.
Right, but I think what you're going to do is you're going to make a token with Moorland Haunt and hope that Reid pings it with Olivia, and that turns on your slips. And you can slip both Huntmaster and Olivia, block the Wolf token, and only take 1 from Arbor Elf.
Yep.
I think that's Joe's plan. Now, Reid, if Reid draws some kind of damage-based removal spell, could throw a wrench in that. Or I guess he doesn't have damage. He just draws Rakdos Return and throws a wrench in that plan.
Well, he could always Tragic Slip the Arbor Elf and then use the second Tragic Slip on the Olivia. And then he could just make a Moorland Haunt token and double block, going only to 1. Which I like that play because the Augur still lives.
Yep.
Or he could also still just cast Sphinx Revelation for 4. But it depends on what Reid decides to do this turn. If he uses some of his mana to try to.
Revelation for 4 is, I mean, if Reid has mana up, is obviously he's going to get himself killed. Probably to that Olivia. So I think he really needs to see what Reid does. If Reid triple pings Augur, then I think maybe you just slip the Olivia and just Revelation for.
He might ping Augur, steal it. But no, he has enough mana to do that if he chooses to. I like just attacking first, seeing if that Moorland Haunt gets activated.
Yep.
No reason to do anything yet. He obviously just can't block and then activate Moorland Haunt. So I think if he's going to make a play, he's going to do it first. Then Reid can decide whether or not he wants to steal the Augur or just ping it or ping a token.
Right. Joe checking to make sure there's no Wolf Run hiding over there amongst Reid's lands. There is not. That is not the threat that he's presenting here.
So Reid going to respond before blocks? Looks like he's thinking about it right here. And yes, he will be pinging something. And he's pinging the token. So
now we're going to see some slips happening. Interesting.
I like this play because he deals with the Arbor Elf, kills off the Huntmaster and the Olivia, and just goes to 1. And he still has an Augur in play, as well as Sphinx of Revelation.
And 1 and 2 are basically the same at this point. Oh, wow. Okay, so you go to 1 that way and then kill both the other creatures. So actually he's leaving Reid with no guys in play.
A tragic slip. So Joe goes to 1.
Reid's considering double paying that auger, I believe, so that at least it will trade with the Arbor Elf. But even if he does that, I mean, Joe's going to untap and cast the Revelation for quite a bit.
So it looks like Olivia's dying, and then we have a second tragic slip here. And
so Joe's at 1.
We have another Huntmaster.
Okay. This has been a really back and forth. Joe's played this game very well.
Yes, and he has the Sphinx of Revelation still. Might just decide to just jam it right now. Make sure he doesn't lose to a Searing Spear or something.
Yep.
Does he have... so he has a Thought Scour as well.
Yep. Yeah, we see his lands kind of running into his graveyard here in a little bit.
Might decide to leave a Moorland Haunt and 2 lands up just in case he wants to make a blocker. You can have Revelations for 5, I believe, and still do that.
I like for 7, I think, just leaving 1 mana up just in Thought Scour on Reid's turn so we can't flip his Huntmaster.
Okay. So Joe's contemplating whether or not he wants to do it main phase or make another line maybe. So yeah, it looks like he's taking your line where he's just going to do it for 7, leave a blue up, make sure Huntmaster doesn't flip.
Or maybe not.
He has to cast a spell this turn.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe he's fearing whether or not a top deck Wolf Run kills him.
That or maybe even a Reckless Return.
So he decides to cast a Thought Scour now. Maybe trying to draw a removal spell to give him a little more play. Again, he might just be afraid of the top deck Keswick Wolf Run. Mills over Supreme Verdict.
And still have one more Supreme Verdict in his deck. I thought we'd seen both of them.
Mage. So pretty good draw there. Snapcaster Mage allows him to not have to cast Sphinx of Revelation this turn and still gives him access to a counter spell.
Upkeep, he's going to do this for 7 now. Okay. So before he could draw a Searing Spear.
So he goes to 8.
Cards flying everywhere.
Wow, so Wolf Run would have actually probably killed him that turn. Now
No.
Huntmaster flips. Well,
It doesn't flip because he played it in the upkeep.
oh, okay, that's right. So Joe seems to be in control of this game. He has a Snapcaster, Augur, and a Restoration Angel, as well as a Syncopate. So
Yep.
plenty of permission. Even though Reduke's at 27 life, Joe's going to be slowly just turning the corner here and just gaining
And
control.
now that he has that pike, it's just going to... What are we Snapcastering here? Oh, getting the Orzo Charm. Okay, that makes sense.
Drops down to 4 life. Not a huge concern for him at this point. He has counter spells. He has 2 counter spells. Draws an Azorius Charm. And
So you see upkeep that Snapcaster? I'm confused about the timing that's going on here. Because Huntmaster wasn't flipping because he upkeep the
Yeah.
Revelation, right? That must be a gigantic Augur Bolus.
so, yes, coming over for maybe not 27, but a large chunk of Reid's life total here. And Joe has access to Dissipate, and Reid only has 1 card in his hand, so looking good. Maybe Joe might be considering casting Azorius Charm or Lifelink, but no, looks like he's just going to be discarding now. So he discards, passes the turn back. Reid draws. Looks like the Wolf Run a little too late. Decides to block, and there's the Azorius Charm.
Yep.
So
1 turn.
Joe managed to pull out game 1 despite a pretty good start from Reid, thanks in part to the power of Sphinx of Revelation.
Yep. Chaining them into each other was obviously a huge part of that victory.
Yeah, and again, Joe's deck, you would imagine, isn't typically going to be as good against Jund as a typical Esper Control deck, but he drew all those Esper Control cards,
Right.
you know? So, as long as you chain into Sphinx of Revelation, it really doesn't matter if you have some cards that aren't particularly that great.
It doesn't matter how many copies of a card you have in your deck when you manage to draw the ones that you do have. Right?
Yeah.
He had that Verge when he needed it on the flashback.
He managed to top deck Syncopate to prevent the Bonfire Dam.
That was
killing him.
huge.
That was huge. So, because even if he does, obviously if he doesn't top deck a Syncopate there, he still doesn't die because he has a Tragic Slip.
Yep.
But obviously the game's completely different because he's at a much lower life total. So Reid is probably able to win that game.
I think Reid definitely wins the game the way it played out if he'd been able to resolve that Bonfire.
Yeah. So looking at Joe's sideboard, he has 2 copies of Evil Twin, 1 Negate, 1 Dispel, 1 Dissipate, 1 Detention Sphere, 2 Appetite for Brains, 1 Supreme Verdict, 2 Duress, 3 Human Ferality, and 1 Tragic Slip. Now, Evil Twin, not typically a card we see coming out of Esper that much, although now with Angel Serenity and Reanimator on the rise, you're starting to see Evil Twin show up more and more. You think he brings in Evil Twin? I mean, we saw Clone come in at a blue-red-white against Jund. You think Evil Twin comes in?
I think so. I think it's very good against Olivia, obviously being able to kill it. I don't believe it says non-legend. I think it just kills a legend if it comes in.
Mm-hmm.
I think Hunt Match of the Fells is a reasonable thing to copy, although your copy can't flip.
Yeah.
If their copy does flip, you can't kill it.
Yeah, we'll bring up a copy of Evil Twin for you right away to just get an idea of what the card is. Not something you've seen probably that much in the past, but now with Reanimator, you're seeing it everywhere. And being able to copy a Thragtusk, we saw that happen before, can be pretty devastating. Being able to copy an Olivia. And the second ability, not something you see come up too often, but could be very relevant.
Sure, absolutely. So I think it's a card that definitely can come in here. Here we see copy any creature on the battlefield. So if it does copy Olivia, it goes and legend rules it.
Yeah. So it's a way to deal with Olivia straight up, but it's also a way to copy a Thragtusk, and then you can actually start killing Thragtusk.
Yep.
So pretty good card. Probably going to come in. Negate, Dispel, Dissipate. Sometimes I would expect Esper to bring in some sort of control package, some of these counter spells because of cards like Rakdos Return and Garruk. But maybe he just brings in Duress and Appetite for Brains. Maybe Appetite for Brains just to deal with Thragtusk. And
that's also true. I think counter spells are typically pretty good against Jund because their big threats are their spells like you mentioned, Rakdos Return. In this case, Bonfire Dam actually quite good against Joe's deck. Garruk Primal Hunter, another potentially problematic card, and Negate there being a very cheap and efficient answer to all of those. I think traditionally Negate comes in this matchup. Here, with the way that Joe's deck is a little bit different, I'm not positive how reactive he wants to make himself with those kind of cards versus if he wants to kind of keep trying to push the tempo and remain the more proactive deck. We saw in game 1 he took a very reactive role and it worked out well for him. Maybe he will slant his deck more in that direction by bringing in things like Negate, Dissipate, and some of those those cards like Duress. Potentially even that other Supreme Verdict. I would be surprised if that comes in. Usually those wraths aren't that important against Jund. Usually only ever going to be a 1-for-1. Occasionally maybe pick off an extra Arbor Elf.
Yeah. Don't love Azorius Charm in this matchup. Can see cutting some of those numbers. To be honest, I don't even love Runechanter's Pike that much in this matchup. I think it's fine, but after board, you're just not sure how many copies of Abrupt Decay they're going to have.
Right.
So sometimes it could just be really terrible.
We see Reid keeping on the play, Joe shipping it back immediately to go into 6. Looking at Reid's sideboard now for this matchup, he has 2 copies each of Pillar, Flame, Bonfire of the Damned, Duress, Underworld Connections, and Slaughter Games, and then 1 of Tragic Slip, Liliana the Veil, Vraska the Unseen, Rakdos' Return, and Grafdigger's Cage. So Reid saw the Pike at the end of that first game, so he knows that Joe's up to something different, playing Pikes, wants to be kind of more aggro control. Maybe that makes sense bring in like a Vraska, kills the Pike and kill things like Detention Sphere. Certainly an option here for Reid. Certainly you're going to want to bring in the Duresses, the Underworld Connections. I don't think Joe's nearly aggressive enough to turn Reid off of those connections. It's one of his primary ways of getting card advantage in this matchup.
And I think typically Jund does bring in Vraska against Esper control because it's a way to deal with cards like Witchbane Orb, where people were using Acidic Slime, but with people playing cards like Clone and Evil Twin now, it could be very dangerous because you're copying an Acidic Slime, and the mana, the Jund deck can be very mana intensive. So being able to copy an Acidic Slime with an Esper deck and dealing with a card like Keswick Wolfrun can be huge. So you're seeing Vraska the Unseen show up a lot more in sideboards, taking the place of Acidic Slime.
I wonder if Reid's going to want to bring in Slaughter Games here. So it's good. It's there for traditional Esper decks, but here he did see 3 Revelations. I believe the 3rd one was cast. Maybe only 2 of them were ever actually cast.
I think you just have to. Because you just saw Joe basically won that game because he chained into 6 Revelations.
Yep.
I don't think Reid can allow that to happen again. So we're off to the start. We're off for races here, and Reid doesn't have to turn too far seek. Does have a good hand though.
Chooses not to cast Duress, saving it, maybe trying to wait to let Joe draw some extra cards and then get more information later. And here it might get his Duress picked off depending on Joe's hand. Yeah, and so the Duress does get to stick around. The higher priority target in the Garrick goes down. Joe with a Pike in his hand, so he didn't take them all out. At the very least, he still left that one in. And now it's going to be his only spell after that 6 Revelation gets taken.
And again, Reid has the Abrupt Decay in his hand, so he's not too concerned about the Pike right now. Probably going to take the Revelation here. And I like Reid not using the Duress right away because he knows he's not going to be casting a spell until turn 4 anyway, so he wants to make sure, give Joe only one turn to draw a counter spell so one of his spells resolves.
Yep.
Joe flips over a Dissipated Augur Bolus and draws what looks like an Evil Twin.
Yep, so Evil Twin making that appearance. And flashing back his Lingering Souls right away. Yep, that makes a lot of sense here. So now Reid's going to go ahead and put that.
Looks like a Huntmaster of Fells might show up here. And Joe does have Evil Twin here. So Evil Twin is going to be pretty good for him right here. It gives him a blocker, lets him gain 2 life. It also has the ability to kill the Huntmaster of Fells next turn. Again, it won't be able to flip itself, but you still be able to deal with Reid's opposing Huntmaster.
He almost doesn't even want to flip his own because he wants to keep it around to pick off the second Huntmaster that's in Reid's hand.
Yeah. So Evil Twin's going to be really good for Joe right here. I believe he does have a 4th mana if he chooses to play it.
Yes, a couple different choices.
Yeah.
Taking 2 from them for that Watery Grave, going to 18, and now, back up to 20.
Back up to 20.
Gets himself a Wolf token.
So swinging in now.
So it's a great start here for Joe.
Yeah, and it looks like, again, Reid's only removal to this point was Abrupt Decay, which can't deal with the Evil Twin. So did he get a Bonfire? Yes, he did. Wow. Huge draw there. Miracle Bonfire for 3. Clears Joe's side of the board, drops into 17, and allows Reid to swing.
Frustrated. You can see kind of the way that Evil Slim got slammed into the graveyard.
Wow. So pretty devastating there. He does have his Orzhov Charm to deal with one of the Huntmasters, but we know Reid does have a second Huntmaster. Also has a Wolf Run in play, which is a card that he could have used earlier last game.
It's a great
Obviously very, very important in this matchup. So top deck Miracle Bonfire looks to be putting Reid back into control. And again, you see an Evil Twin. These players both keep throwing haymakers at each other, and Reid has the upper hand right now.
I wonder if Reid boarded in more copies of Bonfire.
Well, I think they're obviously against Lingering Souls decks. They're much better than typical Esper control decks, so it wouldn't be surprising if he did.
And Joe going to take a Duress here and maybe another peek at Reid's hand. Reid missing his 5th land drop again for a 2nd game in a row.
Wow.
And getting some interesting ground seal still in there. And now the Pike is going to be unopposed.
So Pike is pretty good at stopping the attackers, and because of the First Strike ability, not too concerned about Wolf Run either.
And Joe now with no cards doesn't really care about that Rakdos' return.
Yep.
It's just a Fireball here.
So let's see. Okay, so we do have a 5th land here.
Paying the life. So now if Reid blocks, he's going to get his creature picked off by this Wolf Run.
He does decide to block here.
Did he have to? I guess he had to, otherwise he goes to 1.
And the Rakdos return pretty much finishes him off.
And now we have a flip and 2.
Wow. So
yeah, he had to block, otherwise he was just dead. But yeah, with Rakdos return coming, we can see here the problem with the Pike is it doesn't do much on its own.
So Reid Duke managed to win game 2 thanks to a timely Miracle Bonfire, which we've probably said many times in the Open Series. Miracles, certainly a mechanic that is aptly named.
Yes, very much so.
And yeah, it'd be interesting to see whether or not Reid actually did board in those extra Bonfire dams.
I think I like them here. And so again, it comes down to, we have more information than Reid does, obviously. Maybe he left the 2 and maybe brought in 1 more as a hedge. I probably don't want 4.
I think 3, yeah. I like having 3.
I think 2 or 3 is the right number here. And Reid has played more matches with this Jund deck than probably any human being alive. Yeah. So he understands, he's very good now at adapting on the fly and trying to understand what knobs to turn and kind of tweak his deck to get the right results out of it. So I'd be very curious to kind of find out afterwards and what did he do here.
It does give him a little more range too, just because you like having that burn at the end of the game.
Yep.
We saw him in Game 1, he managed to drop Joe pretty low, down to 1 life at one point, just couldn't finish things off. Whereas a Bonfire, even if you have to hard cast it, can still be pretty good at the end of the game if you're just overwhelming them with creatures.
Absolutely.
And they're just trying to backpedal the entire time. So, especially on the play, I think Bonfire can be very effective. But we'll see what Reid does in Game 3 here now that he's on the draw.
And kind of, again, a reminder of the standings for those who are just joining us. This is Reid Duke and Joe Bernal playing. They're both X and 4 here at the Invitational. Likely dead for top 8. Maybe they can squeak into 8th. Their tiebreaker's not so hot, so it'll be a challenge for that, but certainly still very live for, top 12.
Yeah.
And with an exceptional finish in a tournament of this caliber.
And I think Reid definitely has is in a better position to make top 8 if he does get lucky. Obviously, if he wins this round, he'll probably move up into the top 16 range for sure. And then a couple things go his way, you never know. Maybe he's manages to squeak in there as the 8th seed. And Joe's on the play this game. Very important for his deck. He really wants to be ahead. If he's able to get like a turn 2 Augur Bolus into some action and Reid doesn't have a Farseek, suddenly Reid's deck just might not be able to come from behind that much, which is why I really like the Bonfire sometimes, because again, Reid doesn't have perfect information, but Joe's draw of like turn 2 Augur into a Lingering Souls, flashback Lingering Souls, a card like Bonfire can like sweep up the board.
I mean, normally Augur, I think, is pretty mediocre in this kind of a matchup. It does provide insurance against the Liliana Edicts, but here, since it picks up a Pike,
that's the thing.
It is a little bit more important than usual. I
generally don't like Augur against Jund, but I don't think Joe can really afford to board all of them out. He needs to at least keep a couple of them.
Since we saw him leave at least 1 Pike, he cannot just cut them all. One thing he could have considered doing, though, is kind of sideboarding into a more traditional Esper role, cutting some Augurs, cutting both Pikes. But clearly he thinks that's not the best way to attack this matchup.
Yeah, and the problem is that the sheer amount of removal that's in Reid's deck, maybe he just can't afford to cut the Pikes.
Yeah, we'll be able to win.
Again, they're not great against Abrupt Decay decks, but if you have Duress, which he obviously is bringing in, it's a way to clear the way. And Reid only has 1 Abrupt Decay. So, again, I don't love Rune Chanter's Pike in this matchup, but I don't think Joe can really afford to board them out.
Not having the Drown Yards as a way to win means he maybe just needs to have that kind of burst damage.
He doesn't have any Planeswalkers, and he doesn't have Drown Yards, so he's kind of light on win conditions. Evil Twin obviously helps a little bit, but Reid has a lot of removal.
Here we see Reid going to 6 cards on the draw in this game 3.
Not exactly where he wants to be, but if any deck can make it out, Jund can certainly mulligan pretty well.
Reid probably hoping for a hand with Underworld Connections. I think that's probably one of his critical cards, is my guess. Although maybe the Pikes have convinced him not to go in that direction.
Although Underworld Connections with Bonfire Game is pretty good.
Yeah, 2 shots.
So, turn 1 Arbor Elf, turn 2 Underworld Connections for Reid, possibly.
That's the dream. Just draw 3 a turn. Just get to work. Arbor Elf, tap, draw a card. That's a pretty good Arbor Elf.
So Joe's not in any. Joe's probably not going to be coming out of the gates with blazing speed. Like
even his quote unquote aggressive draws. He wants to play Pike. Similar to how we talked last round about Skullcrack is a card you really want against. You want to draw it later in the game when your opponent's going to be revelationing for large numbers. You want to draw Pike it late in the game when you already have a full graveyard.
So there's the turn 2 Augur Bolus.
And he has the turn 3 Lingering Souls in his hand. So the start you described is an option here.
Wow, and he has a Dissipate too. So if Reid doesn't have a turn 2 Farseek, he's going to be really far behind.
Yep.
Because the Jund deck typically doesn't have many 3-drops. And one of them that he does have is Liliana the Veil. Not very good against a Lingering Souls deck, and not very good when you mulligan.
Right.
So, let's see if he has the turn 2 Farseek here. Oh, it doesn't even have a second land. He did have the Farseek. So,
and Joe now with the Pike as well will be able to punish this draw from Reid. And he just says go. He's just going to counter the Farseek.
Yeah, I kind of like this play.
I don't know. I mean, Reid missed his land drop, so if he doesn't even draw, I'm getting a little more of a clock in play. You can always dissipate the next spell, and what if Reid just bricks on the land?
If he bricks on the land again, the play looks terrible. Yeah, but I think you have to. Yeah, if Reid bricked on a land there, yeah, that play does seem a little awkward because if Reid bricks on a land, that play looks terrible.
Right.
Even if Reid doesn't brick on a land and does no turn 2 Farseek, you can still counter whatever he plays next turn.
And you mentioned he doesn't have 3s, he's playing 4s.
Yeah.
So he has to hit another land still.
Yeah.
And casting that Lingering Souls, a turn earlier, just getting that clock going, I think it's probably a line I like a little bit more, although we actually see that Joe, it looks like he has another Dissipate.
So here's another Farseek.
So just sort of interesting that he, what changed? Why would you not play Lingering Souls when Reid may not even hit a land, and then when he does have a land, you don't? I guess you've taken out his first Farseek. You think he probably doesn't have a second one.
So Joe is actually stalling on land himself. He does have a couple of copies of Restoration Angel, which you can't cast. I believe he does have another copy of Dissipate. He has a Snapcaster Mage, which isn't that effective right now. He'll probably end up passing the turn. Doesn't want to flashback Lingering Souls or cast a Runechanter's Pike. Probably still wants to leave up that Dissipate mana.
You definitely want to counter the 4-drop. That part I think is certainly correct.
Let's see if Reid bricks again on land.
Looks like he may have. Although Reid is certainly a reflective player. He's going to think through his turn before he plays a land, even if he did draw one.
Duress would be great. Maybe. So Ground Seal here.
We're dissipating that guy.
We're gonna have to maybe he wants to turn on make sure his
Snapcaster's alive.
Yeah.
I feel like I'd rather just counter a more impactful spell myself. But
so with 2 copies of Restoration Angel along with the Sphinx of Revelation, Joe seems to be in firm control here. Looks like Reid might be top decking Bonfire here. Yep.
Unfortunately, only for 2, not killing that Augur Bolus.
Yeah, Joe doesn't care about that. Restorations will come down, gain a little more card advantage.
And now I think we're going to see this.
Wow.
The Duress here. If
yeah,
he draws
might as
a
well
land,
keep the Duress.
He's piking, I think, regardless here. It's already +3. If he draws a land, it's going to be +4.
Yeah, so, and Appetite Brains too. So he can actually cast Appetite Brains, Snapcast, or cast it again. Choose to cast Duress if he wants.
I don't like Snapcaster here. I think you just want to make your Pike be first. Interesting. He's just going to cast another Restoration Angel. That works too.
Yeah, I think he's fine.
All roads
either way, he's
Rome here.
It's 8 damage in the air if he just plays Restoration Angel, and like Huntmaster might be a concern, but even that, I don't think he's really that worried about it.
Yeah, these lands showed up a little bit too late here for Reid.
So here comes another Restoration Angel, targeting the Augur Bolus. Does resolve. Reid does not have a removal spell. Looks like an Appetite Brains there, as well as
Thought Scour.
Thought Scour.
Evil Twin will be going to the bottom.
So decides to take the Appetite Brains here.
I'm taking the Thought Scour there, but
well,
I mean, he's dead no matter what.
Yeah, so there's the murder. If he draws a land, no, still no land. Is he gonna pike up here?
That's why I like the Scour, just that way you had another draw step to draw the land and be lethal.
So
I think you should just Appetite and Duress here. Just play it safe.
Yeah, because you're not lethal this turn anyway.
Right.
So I like Duress, attack, maybe even flashback Lingering Souls. Maybe you want to just get the Pike out there. So there's an Appetite Brains, takes the Thragtusk. None of those cards matter.
Yep.
I like flashing back Lingering Souls here. And I like casting the Appetite Brains again, just so you can make the... Oh, he has the Thought Scour, so he doesn't need to.
No, he didn't take the Thought Scour.
Oh, okay. So I like casting Duress here just to fuel up the... I like casting Appetite Brains here.
Yep.
But it looks like he's just going to pass. If Reid does play a land, then he knows he's winning no matter what.
Yep.
Let's see if Reid... So Liliana the Veil here.
Won't do it.
Doesn't
dead
matter.
Unfortunately, dead to that Pike.
Joe clearly shouldn't care about this card.
Shows him the Pike, says, hey, do we need to keep going?
That's it. Maybe he just plays a Snapcaster out there.
Yep.
Pike. Reid's at 4 anyway, doesn't really matter.
And that's the handshake there. So Reid stalling on one land.
Couldn't
Couldn't get there.
Stalling on one hand, keeping a hand of Farseek, Ground Seal, 1 land.
Yep.
Not an unreasonable mulligan.
Especially he's already on 6 cards on the
draw.